Good morning, and we are in a new week, and we've got Doctrine and Covenants 10 and 11 this week, and that means about 15 verses a day if we were to do just the reading, which is not very much. We've done it in the Book of Mormon before that way as well, but it's talking about, we're still in the translation of the Book of Mormon, actually, and here is a replica of the original Mormon Book of Mormon transcript, and we've got, if you go to Joseph Smith Papers, you can actually see the transcript of these pages. It's quite interesting to look at, and to see how they just filled up the whole page, and it's quite a talent actually to write so neatly and so much, I think. And as you see, there's very little punctuation or anything. And when they got the manuscript to the printer, it's just printed. Well, most of it, I think, from what I understand, there's very little punctuation as well in that. And was put in there must have been put in by the printer. But anyway, just a thought. And today we're going to start. We'll start with the introduction to this section, and the theme is that you may come off Conqueror. So think about our relationship with God and how when we do what His will, and we talked about desires and the will of God last week, but here we're learning that if we do what He asks, we will come off Conqueror. So let's read the introduction and see where we go from here. As the translation of the Book of Mormon continued, a question came up. What should Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery do about those lost pages of the translation? It might make sense to retranslate that portion, but the Lord saw something they could not. Their enemies were planning to alter the words on those pages to cast doubt on Joseph's inspired work. God had a plan to avoid that problem and keep the work moving forward. I think there's a lot just going through my mind. What could have happened? Well, it could have accidentally, there could have been an accident and they could have burned. There could have been, could have just not happened. But then again, if it wouldn't have happened, then Martin Harris would have accepted no for an answer in the first time, and then none of it would have happened in the first place. I think this was a learning experience as well for Joseph. So, as I said last week, if you listen to the wording and the things in these, you can see it as a parent teaching a child things. So God knew that this was going to happen, that the plates were, the translation pages were going to be lost, and He knew that it'd be devastating to Joseph. He knew that enemies would be planning to alter the words. He knew all this, and He could have done several different things to either prevent it or to change it, and he decided to go with something different, which was, okay, well, we're not going to retranslate these pages, but we do have some other, some more account that will cover the same period, but will be more doctrinally rich, is basically what it sounds when you read these different things. The writings of Nephi and what Messiah says, not Messiah, Mormon says when he writes in the words of Mormon. But what basically I feel that the Lord was trying to teach something to Joseph Smith. Joseph needed to learn something about Joseph. And as I said before, I think it's very significant that at this point Martin stops the translation for several reasons. I think there was a lot of need there, need to have evidence and all this stuff. And I think there was also a time when it was like, okay, he's got a lot on his plate. He's got a marriage that is difficult and failing. He's got he lives in a different place than Joseph Smith does, and just a lot of different things going on in his life. And there's probably, not only was it like, oh, you lost some manuscripts, so you cannot be scribe anymore, but I think it's also, well, maybe we should, maybe you need that time to yourselves as well, and to yourself to deal with your personal problems. It doesn't say that in the scriptures, of course, but I just thinking about what he's going through, I think is mercy that he wasn't doing it. And then God puts in Oliver Cowdery in the way of Joseph Smith, and you just see this chemistry come out, and we talked about that last week. But now they were wondering about what to do about these pages, and as it says here, God knew what was going to happen. They're always learning. God had a plan to avoid that problem and keep the work moving forward. Thousands of years earlier, God inspired Nephi to write a second record that covered the same time period for a wise purpose in him. And then he says, my wisdom, the Lord said to Joseph, is greater than the cunning of the devil. That is a reassuring message in a day like ours. This is where we're going to get our, where we're going to tie it in. When the adversary is intensifying his efforts to weaken faith, like Joseph, we can be faithful and continue on in the work of God as called, at the work God has called us to do. When we find, then we will find that he has already provided a way so that the gates of hell shall not prevail against us. So this week, as we read these things, let's look for those things that will give us the faith and the strength to carry on, even if we're having a difficult time, or even if things are not the way that we really ideally would have liked them to be, know that the Lord will be there. If something's happened in your life, and I've known, I don't know anybody that everything has worked out the way they thought it would in their life, really. Maybe a few people, but they don't seem that. The people I've seen a lot of growth in are those that they go, well, this isn't where thought I was going to be now, or this, because of this, I don't know if I'll ever get to where I thought I'd be, or whatever. Knowing that God is there and God understands us, He's not taken away our agency. He's given us a chance to grow and learn and become more like Him. Always remember that God doesn't just want people to do good. He wants people to choose to do good. And I think that's where we sometimes need to find ourselves. We often struggle in making sure that we make those choices. And if we don't, we stop, regroup, and then come back. And God will be there, even if we've lost something on the way that we really didn't want to lose. We still turn to God, and He will help us in our choices. And I believe that strongly, and I hope you do too. And I hope today you can be faithful and continue on in the work of God